Walter Hensley. I'm 63 years old, and 18 months after selling the HVAC company I spent 31 years building for $6.2 million. I stood at my son's housewarming party and heard him tell his friends I'd never even read the paperwork he handed me. He wasn't wrong. Yet my wife Margaret's fingers closed around my wrist like she was pulling me back from traffic. "Don't turn around," she whispered. Behind me, threaded under the party noise, my son Derek's voice. "My old man thinks this is his money." I told Priya, "Just let him feel important. Sign whatever. We'll deal with the real paperwork after. He'll never even read it. He trusts me." I'd wired Derek and his fiancée 18 4 months earlier for the down payment on their $1.4 million house in Oakwood Hills. A gift at Derek's request. No paperwork, because why would we need that between family? I'd been proud when I signed that wire, standing there with the warm champagne glass. I finally understood that pride and understanding are not the same thing. I didn't confront him that night. I complimented the kitchen island and drove home in silence. The next morning, I called my accountant of 19 years and asked him to quietly pull the closing documents. 4 days later, he called back with the flat, careful voice he only used when something was wrong. My gift was listed as a loan, secured with a second lien position behind a $340,000 private loan from a man named Alan Getty. And Derek's name wasn't on the title at all, only Priya's. I invited Derek to lunch and laid it out calmly. He didn't flinch. That was what hurt most. "That's just structuring, Dad. Tax optimization. It protects you, actually." He smiled the same way he had as a boy, explaining why the neighbor's window was already broken before he threw the ball. I thanked him for explaining it. Then I went home and called a real estate attorney. She read the documents in 11 minutes. "This isn't structuring," she said. "This is a second lien with no repayment schedule, no interest disclosure, and your son's name isn't on the property anywhere. Whoever drafted this protected the buyer from you." "The firm that drafted it?" "Getty and Okonkwo Title Services, founded by Alan Getty and Priya, Okonkwo brother and sister. My son's fiancée and her brother had structured a deal that turned my $180,000 gift into an unprotected loan, secured a house solely in her name, run through her own family's title company, and sold it to me as tax optimization. Derek had helped. That night, I drove back to the Oakwood house, parked 2 streets over, and watched through the back fence. Priya was laughing in the kitchen. "Your dad literally thanked you for explaining it. He gave us $500,000, and he doesn't even own a doorknob in that house." Derek laughed too. "He built a whole company out of nothing, and he can't read a title report. Kinda sad, honestly." I stood in the dark, 63 years old, and felt something in my chest go very quiet and very cold. I told Margaret everything the next morning. She didn't cry. She made coffee and said 4 words I've thought about every day since. "Then let's be smart." We hired a forensic accountant, a former FBI financial crimes analyst named Diane. What she found in 16 days was worse than one bad deal. Alan Getty's title company had run at least 11 similar transactions over 3 years. Family gifts quietly converted into unsecured loans favoring one party, with the title company collecting fees on both the closing and the private loan. 3 families had already filed complaints with the state. 2 were in litigation. My $180,000 wasn't a betrayal. It was a fee-generating machine, and my son had walked me into it, smiling the whole way. So I made a decision I've never told anyone about. I became, on purpose, a confused old man. I softened my voice on calls. I left my reading glasses conspicuously in my shirt pocket, so I'd have an excuse to squint and ask Derek to explain things. I stopped mentioning the house. Every "I don't understand" bought another week of them not covering their tracks. Every confused nod meant Priya kept talking freely around someone she decided was harmless. Margaret played her part, too. The deferential wife, always agreeing that your father gets confused sometimes. We'd drive home in silence until the highway, and only then would she ask quietly, "How much did you get today?" I wasn't losing my grip. I was loosening theirs. Over 3 weeks we built the trap. I asked Derek to help me draft a simple memo forgiving the $100 debt entirely framed as an old man wanting peace of mind, structured by my attorney as a document that, once signed, would be a clear paper trail admitting the original deal had been misrepresented to me. Ohio is a one-party consent state, so I started carrying my phone in my breast pocket, recording every time I visited that house. And Diane connected the two litigating families with my attorney, who began quietly building a joint complaint. I set the date, Derek and Priya's engagement dinner, 6 weeks out, hosted at our house. The week before, Diane texted at 11:47 p.m., 2 more families found, total exposure now over 2 more 1 million. The state commission had opened a formal file. 22 guests. The good china we'd bought in 1994. Derek stood to give a toast, to my dad who still doesn't totally understand what a lion is, bless him. Some men build companies. My dad built confusion, but hey, it worked out great for us. The table laughed. Priya laughed loudest. I stood up slowly, the way I'd been standing for weeks. A little stiff, a little uncertain. The room quieted, expecting sentiment. I do understand liens, actually, I said. My voice didn't need to rise. This one is a second lien, subordinate to a $340,000 loan from Alan Getty, Priya's brother, co-owner of the title company, currently under state review for 11 similar transactions, 3 already in litigation. I understand my $180,000 gift was never entered as a gift, because Derek told me himself over lunch that it was structuring. I have that conversation recorded. I have a second one from this house's own backyard, where Priya said I gave them $500,000 and don't even own a doorknob. Now, I set my phone on the table, screen up, a paused waveform visible. Nobody reached for it. 11 other families went through the exact same arrangement. 2 are represented by the attorney I hired 6 weeks ago. Derek's face went the color of the tablecloth. Dad, this isn't the place. You're right, I said. So let's make it simple. I took out the forgiveness memo he'd helped me draft, held it up so the table could see both signatures, and tore it once, cleanly, down the middle. The halves fell onto his empty plate. That was never forgiveness, I said. It was evidence. As of Monday, it belongs to my attorney, the State Real Estate Commission, and the County Prosecutor's Financial Crimes Unit. I picked my champagne glass back up, the same kind I'd been holding the night this started, and set it down without drinking. I'm not confused. I just wanted to see how long you'd both keep talking. Within 11 days, the county prosecutor opened a formal fraud inquiry into Getty and Okonkwo. Alan Getty's licenses were suspended 3 weeks later. 2 more families joined the civil suit, pushing total damages past $4 million. Priya wasn't criminally charged, but she was named as a beneficiary in the suit and lost her firm's biggest client within a month. Derek and Priya's engagement ended 9 days after that dinner. The one person I made sure landed on his feet was Casey, a young receptionist at the title company who'd unknowingly shown me the letterhead that cracked the whole thing open. He'd done nothing wrong. I got him a job at a title company 2 counties over. It rained the night Derek came back 5 months later. He stood on our porch, thinner than I remembered. Dad, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I have nowhere else to go tonight. 34 years of being his father pulled at my chest, but I kept my voice level. You have somewhere to go, Derek. It's just not here, not tonight. Not until you've spent as much effort making this right as you spent explaining why it was fine. He nodded like he'd expected it, and hated that he'd hoped anyway. I closed the door, not hard, just firm, and stood there a moment with my hand flat against the wood. Margaret was in the kitchen with 2 cups of tea already made, like she'd known. You okay? She asked. I understand liens very well now, I said, and she laughed. Really laughed. The first easy laugh either of us had had in months. 31 years of business, and one very expensive family lesson taught me this. Love your children fiercely, but never let family be a reason to skip the paperwork. The people who tell you documentation is unnecessary because your family are very often counting on you never reading the fine print. If you'd been at that table, would you have torn up the memo right then or waited for a quieter moment? Tell me in the comments.